All right, here we go. Another episode of Sports Cards Live. This is episode number 8, and super excited about this one. We've got an awesome guest tonight, Karn Rai. Karn is I like to call him a professional razzer. He's also a gentleman who commissioned a really awesome study at Quenns University for PhD students in artificial intelligence on grading by computer. So we're going to bring him out in a few minutes. Before that, just a few things. I want to thank Steve Menzie, the owner of the Expo, and Chris Carlin from Upper Deck for joining me on Saturday. That was an awesome episode. They dished out some really good insider information. So thanks to them. And then, of course, on Sunday, we had the first showcase with 10 vendors from Expo, and that was truly a success. I've heard from almost all of them, and lots of deals were had. I made a few myself. So just want to thank everybody for tuning in on that. That was a lot of fun. We went almost 4 hours there. So longest episode yet, but something that you can always go back to YouTube and watch and see what sort of cards were made available. So coming up tonight, I mentioned this Saturday, Brian Gray from Leaf Trading Cards is going to be joining me. So that's going to be a pretty awesome discussion we'll have. So be sure to tune in for that on Saturday at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. And then I'll also mention again on May 23rd, speaking of Brian's, we have Brian Price, the owner of currently President's Choice Trading Cards, former owner of In the Game. He's worked with other companies as well, Be a Player and Parkhurst and ProSet, and I think even Upper Deck. So stay tuned for that on the 23rd. Also, before we bring out Karn, I'm going to just help out a buddy of mine, Eric, who goes by the name Hammerhawks on Hobby Insider. He's doing a giveaway of a Gordie Howe autograph card. So we're going to do that right now really quick. So Eric, if you're watching, and anyone else who was entered in there, I'm just going to share my screen with my Excel where I have all the, that's not it. Hold on a second. Let's go back to here. So we're going to bring up the Excel that has everyone who entered the show or entered the contest with him. So this is it here. I'll just do that. All right. So everyone's in here who entered the contest on Hobby Insider. There's, I think, 68 names. So now I'm going to go to random.org and I'm going to plug in. We've got 1 to 68 there. I'm going to hit this. We'll do it 3 times. Whoever is, whatever number comes up third, whoever's in that row will win that Gordie Howe card. Eric, here you go for your contest. Thank you for doing it. Very generous of you. There's the first time, the second time, and this one for the win. Number 11. Number 11 is Spooner 9-Ball. There you go. You win the Gordie Howe autographed card. Awesome. All right. One more thing before I bring out Karn, guys. This is kind of off topic, but kind of awesome. So I bought a card on eBay a couple weeks ago, and it came in. This is the card I bought. It's a Rick Nash Ultimate Emblem. I've got like 85 of these cards. They're all one of ones. I love them. Anyway, it came in, and the case was super scuffed all over the place. I was pretty disappointed. I thought, well, that sucks, but at least I got the card. And then I saw something online on YouTube about how to clean up your slabs if they're really scuffed up. And this one was scuffed bad. I was like, yikes, right? Anyway, so the stuff came today. This is the stuff I got. I want to show you guys this. It's called Meguiar's Scratch X 2.0. You just put a bit of it right on the slab and you buff it out with some paper towel. And now this thing, it looks like it's freshly pack pulled. I swear, I'm super pumped, super happy about it. So if anyone has slabs that are super scuffed or even lightly scuffed, go on Amazon, buy yourself a bottle of this stuff, Meguiar's Scratch X 2.0. All right, just a little public service announcement there. All right, let's bring out Karn. Here he comes. Karn Rai, everybody. This is Karn Rai. Karn, welcome to Sports Cards Live. I'm super happy to have you on today.
Hey, Jeremy. Happy to be here.
Thanks,
and
man.
I think you saved me probably hundreds of dollars a year now because I always send in my Beckett cases to get reholdered every time I have a scratch on a case. So
now you know, man. I just, you know what? I wasn't sure what it was going to look like. I asked my wife to order this from me on Amazon. It came today. I got home from work. I applied it, and it was like literally like magic. I'm super, super happy with how perfect the slab is now. So yeah, I'm tempted to go through the rest of my slabs and look for ones that are scuffed up too, right? But that's going to take a lot of time. I got a lot of slabs in my collection. So All right, man. Well, listen, you've done some really interesting things. And the reason why I wanted to have you on is because I really like your approach to what really caught my eye was the branding you've applied to your Razzing in your group on Facebook that's called the Big Three Hockey, and then also your Instagram account. I've been following you on Instagram. You always show great cards. And this guy's got something interesting going on. And then I forget how we found out, but you mentioned to me that you did you commissioned a study at Queen's University. You put your money where your mouth is. You really stuck your arm out there for the hobby, and you went out of pocket and you had a study done on grading by computer and whether or not it's possible. I mean, people are always saying that there's inconsistency. It's too subjective. There could be favoritism. All these accusations and criticisms about the grading services that exist. And you thought, well, let's see if we can figure out what's really what's the deal. Is it possible to take out the subjectivity and make it more objective and consistent? And so, I mean, those two things. Number one, Razzing is something that I've known about on online for a while. It's not something I'm really active in, but I'm aware of it. I've actually had a couple cards razzed for me over the last couple of years, probably about 2 years ago. But I thought it'd be interesting because I know a lot of people maybe don't know what it is. And I thought you're probably the perfect guy to explain it. So why don't you kick us off, man? What is Razzing?
So essentially, Razz is kind of so you get 10 people involved. They put their money up, and out of those 10 people, you run a random generator to figure out the winner of the Razz. So there's 10 people, you put the 10 names, the list in a list generator, and then after say 3 rounds or 5 rounds on the generator, the person at the top per se wins the card. So I like to consider it as like a crowdsourced purchase in a type of way. So that's kind of what we do at the Big Three.
Okay, so for example, if you want to sell a card for $1,000 and you're going to offer, say, 10 spots at $100 each, and then you're going to randomize it just like I did earlier with that other prize. Whoever comes out on top would win the card, and everybody else just kind of gambled and didn't win, sort of thing.
Yeah, so you get the chance to win cards maybe you wouldn't buy as a single on eBay, or you don't want to put up the full amount of money to purchase that card. So it gives you a chance to win that card at a fraction of the cost.
That's okay. That makes sense. I'm pretty familiar with that kind of approach, but I just want people to hear it. What does the word Razz mean? Where did that word come from?
Actually, I figure it comes from raffle. It's kind of one of those terms of art where once you enter the community, you hear Razz all the time. I'm not sure if you would ask 10 people and 9 of them probably wouldn't know where Razz came from. So I'm actually not really sure, but it's just something that's stuck, and I continue with it.
Yeah, I think that's my understanding too, is that it came out of it's kind of like a raffle. People buy tickets, one person wins. And so, but I don't know, why isn't it called raffing then instead of razzing, you know?
Right?
You know, just sounds better probably, right? So when, you know, your brand that you use for your razzing, the Big Three Hockey or the Big Three, you know, it really looks professional to me. How did you kind of spot the opportunity and say, you know what, I'm going to kind of take this up a notch and make it more professional and more maybe acceptable to people who may not really understand it or think it gets too close to the line of gambling?
Yeah. So when I first entered the hockey card community on Facebook, so I obviously entered a lot of groups, and there's some wonderful, great groups out there. And it's really tough on the admins when you have 4,000, 5,000 members, and you have an open sourced situation where anyone can post things. It becomes really difficult to maneuver around that and handle that. And you get circumstances where maybe once in a while you get maybe like scammers come into play, and people don't get their cards. And that doesn't happen very often, but it happened often enough where it became a problem in the community. Furthermore, on top of that, I wanted to create a situation where there would be this end-to-end Razz group. So the admin could control the full community, the full group, and see which posts are coming through, which cards are getting razzed. And I wanted to razz what I consider to be razzable cards. So what I consider razzable cards are hot cards in that specific time period. So for example, Ovechkin cards are coming in, so I accept Ovechkin cards in the Big Three during that time, Matthews cards, McDavid cards. And the reason for that is essentially I want every card to funnel through my group to be something that could fill and has the possibility of filling. I wanted to kind of declutterize the Razz groups in a way, and I also wanted that end-to-end opportunity to foresee the start of the Razz to the end of the Razz. When the card enters the Razz system and the card gets shipped out, I wanted to foresee it all to make sure no one gets scammed. And it's been 3 years. There has not been a scam in the big three. Has not been much controversy at all. So that was kind of my core competencies in creating the group.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So you use the word fill, and just so I'm clear and everyone else is clear, when you say to make sure it fills, to make sure that if I put a card out there on Razz, $100, 10 spots, I want to sell all 10 spots. Otherwise, some people that were willing to buy the spot are never going to have the chance on that card, at least not this time. So, and you also talked about, the end-to-end thing. So what were you seeing out there that kind of made you think, what, Razzing needs a group that's going to actually run it from end to end? Because if not, what could happen? And I mean, I'm kind of loading the question because I've seen some groups where, cards Razz, they don't fill. Then they get into these things called minis and micros. And I've even seen nanos. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so we partake in minis and micros and nanos as well. But what allows it to be suitable for an end-to-end group is with minis and micros and such, it clutters the group up, right? So when you have, say, like 50, 60 people trying to post at the same time, you can't have a member in the community search through the group and find that card that they want. So you kind of want to have a system where you have only 1 or 2 cards up at one time, so the members of the group can see that card. And obviously, like, an open source situation is great. It's needed in the community. But I kind of just wanted to create like a different focus and have a group that's kind of geared towards specific cards at specific times. And members can enter and look at the cards anytime. They can check daily what cards are up. And maximum, there will be only 2 cards, 3 cards up at one time. And we try to fill or make sure all the spots are taken in each Razz that we do.
So you're really coming at it from a customer experience kind of perspective, saying if you're gonna enter or buy into our Razzes, we want you to be able to find them first of all, and not search through a really cluttered Facebook group sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, how are cards that you put out for Razz, how are they priced?
So what we typically do is I think of myself as kind of like a broker in the situation. So when we have owner of cards come to the big three and they say, I have this amazing card. First, I check the card and I see if it's suitable for a Razz. And what I mean by suitability is we want cards that people desire in a Razz. So you might have a card that's desirable in the market, but it might not be desirable in a Razz. What that means is you want 20 to 30 people to be interested in that card, because you need 10 to 50 people to fill a card in a Razz, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
First, I check that off. Then I check off the condition, make sure I ask the owner of the card, is a card mint? I check that off, and I make sure the person's reputable, make sure that if someone wins the card, they're going to get the card. And then I ask, I don't look at comps first. I ask the owner, because I'm a firm believer in it's your card. How much do you want for your card? So if they say something that's close to the comps, I say, just kind of win me over. Why do you think that this card is worth more than the comps right now? Maybe they'll show me that the card that ended at $1,600 yesterday had a damaged corner, so I want $1,700 on mine or $1,800 on mine. Or maybe there's an old comp for 3 months ago and the players' cards have risen since that time. So I'll look at all these factors and I kind of take part in a negotiation with the owner of the card behind the scenes before razzing the card. So in that way, both the owner is happy and the winners are happy in a sense, because we're going to try to fill the card. The owner's going to get his desired value on the card, and we take our 10% fee for razzing, and that's 3% less than eBay, and you get to negotiate with the owner of the card as well. So it's kind of a situation where every party wins in a sense. So.
Sure, makes sense. Kind of reminds me, I don't know if you ever watched $1 Million Listing, New York or LA, where the big superstar realtors, and they a big part of their episodes is always negotiating with the homeowner on what they're gonna list the house for. So you're kind of doing that, but on the scale of sports card. And you don't do just hockey. You do basketball, soccer. I know you do those for sure. Do you do any baseball and football?
Yeah, so I just kind of go with the taste of the group. Personally, like what I buy everything. Like I buy things from Pokemon to hockey to soccer to football. For the group, I just try to test out the space. I sometimes even just tell the group members maybe they're not comfortable with the sport. And I say, hey guys, look, this card is shooting up in value. This is a card that's very desirable on the market right now. Give it a shot. If you guys want me to put it up, we'll put it up. Like today, we did our first soccer Razz. I don't think there has been many soccer Razzes in Canada yet, so that was pretty cool to see, and it filled up really quick. So that's what we try to do. We try to Razz cards that we consider to be desirable in the market today. So the owner can win a card and they can sell that card down the line for more value if they want to, or if they want to keep it as their PC item or a collectible that they want to keep forever. Like that's kind of what the direction we'll want to go towards.
Fair. Okay, cool. So a couple more things on Razz I want to understand. So I see a lot when I do come across a group that has a Razz, I see this comment says buy back 80% or something like that. I have an idea what it means, but why don't I let you explain that just so people listening can have an understanding when they come across that?
Yeah, so buybacks is not something that we do because we try to run our Razzes legally. My background is actually in the law, so I studied law school in Queens University. So I actually try to make my Razz group legal. So the buyback portion of things kind of wanes the line of legality, but what it is you get an 80% portion of the value of the Razz back if you win as an option instead of the card itself. So say if it's $1,000 card, you can get $800 back. So
instead of taking the card.
Yeah.
So then the owner of the card basically gets that 20% sort of arbitrage amount, if you will, and just gets to keep it for themselves and go Razz it again.
Razz it again, but typically the standard is to lower the line afterwards. So that kind of helps the arbitrage and make sure that no one's profiting a huge amount off that. But yeah, that's definitely a gray area in the Razz world for sure.
Sure. And you use the term there, lowering the line. So the line is like how many spots you're offering and how much each spot is going to be. So a card for $1,000, you could have 10 spots at 100 or 1,000 spots at $1.
Exactly.
Right. So, which actually brings me back to the question earlier about micros or minis, micros, and nanos, which are different levels of buying into the Razz. So I think the way, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the way it works is if you're doing a Razz for $1,000, 10 spots, that's $100 a spot. You can then say, okay, now we're going to Razz off, say 3 of those $100 spots. So we're going to now, that's $300. We're going to now sell 10 spots at $30 each. And the top 3 winners of that would each win a spot in the main Razz. Is that kind of how that works?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of used in circumstances that perhaps there is interest in a card, but the buy-in is too high or potentially too much of a risk for someone to enter. So they perhaps might take a shot at what is considered a mini. And with the mini, you have a chance to win the main spot. So that's kind of how that works. And that's kind of used in those large cards, over $500, over $1,000. We've razzed huge cards like a Matthews Cup when it first came out, $10,000 card at the time. We tried razzing a McDavid Cup BGS 9 at one point. We almost got it done, but we were a little short on that. But micros and minis kind of help that type of situation.
Okay, that's cool. So it goes main, then it goes mini, then micro, then nano. So you have
a long time. So
I've seen them. I kind of look. I go, wow, that's kind of really pushing it, right?
That gets tough.
Because I guess but if you're going to buy into a nano, which would be the smallest possible way for $1 into $1,000 card, you do have a chance of winning that card for $1.
Actually, we razzed a Matthews High Gloss Young Guns about 2 years ago. Wow. And I think it was $9,000 was the value of the card. Someone won the card for about $60 around there, $55. So it does, and so Great.
That's a big win. That's a big. All right, I'm just going to go to a few comments. We've got a bunch coming in. First of all, Andy, no, I cannot see your name, brother. So give that another try somehow. I want to get down to funny name. I'm not sponsored. I just bought that stuff. Here, I'll show it again. This is the Meguiar's Scratch 2.0. If anyone knows anyone at Meguiar's and they want to sponsor this episode or this show, bring them on. Happy to do that. And I just want to show it again because it's called Meguiar's. There's an A in there too. MEGUIAR''S. But you shouldn't forget that picture. I went hunting for that at Walmart about a week ago. I went online. They said it would be in the automobile section, and it wasn't. So anyway, there was none, but my wife ordered it for me, so that was pretty awesome. Here's a great question from Brett. Karn, this is for you. Do you keep a historical archive of your past Razzes?
Yeah, I actually used to keep an archive of my Razzes, but actually I was speaking about earlier the cluttering of the group page, so I started deleting the old Razzes past like a month or 30 days. So we do have kind of an archive of the last 30 days on the page.
Okay, very cool. So Brett, there you go. And then Cardboard Nostalgia asked, is there a concern about running your entire operation on Facebook? He's heard that Facebook is cracking down on certain Razz groups.
Yeah, I think the advantage I have there is to try to make it as legal as possible. So the way to do that is you kind of have to have a no purchase necessary. You have to make sure that the game is a chance of skill and not luck. That's what keeps into the legal realm. And how you do that is you ask a skill testing question to all the winners. So that kind of takes away the game. It's crazy how the law works. So that's how it is. And then you consideration to each person that enters a Razz. So that could be even a digital picture that's considered consideration. It's called a peppercorn principle. So you just have to give a penny or a dollar to each pictures. So that's kind of how you get away with the gaming commission violation. So it is definitely a gray line, but you can definitely make it more and more legal where it becomes a situation where it definitely cannot just get cracked down if you properly manage your group.
Right. It's kind of funny you mentioned the skill testing question, because even to win a lottery or a scratch and win ticket at the lottery centers throughout the country, you need to answer that skills testing question. At least you did it one time. And it's funny because that was the government doing it. They set the laws, yet they're giving you the loophole around it for their own things.
It's an easy loophole too. So it's
yeah. And I like the idea, the consideration that you give back to everybody being that digital picture. I mean, hey, that is something. It's something that isn't nothing, and that's if it gets you around it, and with your legal background, hopefully you've covered off all your bases there, cross the T's, out of the I's, and stay out of trouble and keep this going. Carvin, who's formerly of Upper Deck and joined me on my episode number 2, says it's a raffle. The F's are replaced by ZZ or ZZ. So that just clarifies that for us. Thank you for that, Carvin. And then I think this is my buddy Andy writes, seems like a ton of work sometimes to razz stuff off, especially when you have to do minis and so on. So does that kind of speak to your whole thing about, we want to just do it clean and not get into that too much? Like, how often do you need, what percent of razzes do you actually need to get into the lower level micros, minis, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's that's why when I think we have to appreciate all our group admins in the hockey card community. I think a lot of times when something goes wrong in other groups, people are quick to jump on the admins. It's a very, very difficult job to run a group, and you always have to be on your feet and on your toes. And in the situation of a Razz, there is a lot of work to get done. So because you have this, you've told this owner of a card that you're going to try to fill their card, and you're asking a broker fee to get that Razz done. So you're going to try your best in the best interest of the broker between you and the owner of the card to fill the Razz up as much as you can. So you're going to have to do the minis and the micros, and you have to check the payments. You got to make sure that all the payments are coming in time. Then you have to manage the people that are paying on time and some are not paying on time. So you got to message them, courtesy calls, which is completely fine. People have busy days, right? So it's kind of, you have to manage it all, but you have that you have to work in the best interest of the owner of the card and the group in general, and bring in content for the group. So it is a lot of work, but I think it's worth it, and it brings value to everyone in the ecosystem of cards.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, for me, when I was thinking about selling cards that way, or at least entertaining the idea, because when it was new, and I realized how much work it is, I said, forget it. It's just too much work for me. I don't really want to spend the time at it. So I kind of, admire that you've not only spent the time, but you've really cleaned it up. You've tried to perfect it, make it more professional, and you've branded yourself with the big three. I love your branding. I think it's beautiful. So that's really awesome. Davey asks, can you get into a Razz without Facebook? He only has Instagram, which is a nice segue into, I think, the direction and the future of the big three, as we were discussing, being you're focusing a little bit more on Instagram. Why don't you speak to this a little bit?
So at this time, it's a Facebook only thing for the big three. I do know that there's certain people that do run Razzes on Instagram, but there's not enough safety measures on Instagram, in my opinion, to really have a perfect situation that it works with Razzing, because you kind of have aliases involved. You can't really see who the person is. So at this time, it's more so a Facebook thing. But if you want to get out and branch out into the real world, there's actually a lot of companies now that are trying to legal Razz items. So there's 1 in 100 that kind of Razzes sports tickets, and 1in100.com. So you enter to win Leafs tickets, for example. And then there's a Canadian company called Razzall that many people probably have heard about, and they do it on their website. So not on IG yet, Facebook only at this time.
Sure. And then next question from Sean: do you cross post in other Facebook groups, or do you own any of the cards? Great questions. And do you own any of the cards in your group Razzes? So first, I'll just explain cross posting. I do understand that. So cross posting is where you list it in one group, but then you list it in another group as well. And for complete transparency, you let the members of both groups know that you've posted it in both of those groups, so that spots may fill from within another group. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't go ahead?
Yeah, so with cross-posting, the big three doesn't do it. I have done it in the past, and I've tried it out, and it just becomes a little too difficult to manage two separate posts. If someone's taking a spot in the big three and someone's taking the same spot in another group, it starts converging together, and
tough to manage.
Yeah, it's tough to manage. So we try not to cross-post in other groups. And in terms of owning the cards, I do own some of the cards that we Razz, but a large percentage of the cards are members in the group. And what we try to do is behind the scenes make sure that everything is safe. So we want all the cards to be under the guise of the big three brand. So that's why you see the pictures, they're all consistent. The Razz posts are all consistent. You don't know the owner of the card, but we're kind of telling you guys, anyone that wants to join a Razz, we back this Razz. Anything goes wrong, we're paying you for it. You're going to get the value of the card. We're going to make sure you're going to get the card, and we're going to provide the tracking information, all that information.
So it's kind of like you're sort of providing a hybrid sort of escrow service, where you're not actually taking physical possession of the card in the middle, but you are verifying its existence, it's verifying its condition, and really getting comfortable that the card is actually going to travel from the current owner to the winner of the Razz.
Yeah, it's kind of like the business model of like StockX. If people out there know StockX's business model, so you put an item on their website to sell, and then StockX verifies the item and ships it out. It's kind of like that, but we're not taking ownership, but we're taking the interest in selling the card. We don't have the card in hand, but we're making sure that the card gets to you, and we back that completely. So if something goes wrong, we insure it. We make sure that the owner gets the full value of the card. And in 3 years, nothing has gone wrong. So it's a solid. It's
how many Razzes would you estimate you've managed and run over the last 3 years?
Oh, it's been a lot. I would say sales transactions and Razzes. I kind of like on my Excel sheet, I don't have a separate file for Razz and sales. So I would say I've had about 1,500 to 1,700 transactions. I would say about 900 to 1,200 are probably Razzes.
Okay, so you're quite an experienced Razzer then. So I picked the right guy to join me here.
Yeah, it's
awesome. So Here's another question for you from Ty. He asked, have you ever had any big fights between people that you had to intervene over a Razz?
So I don't know specifically like what direction you mean in a fight, but I have had situations where, say, if I've made a mistake, mistakes do happen. For example, a situation, person X picks number 6 in the Razz, and I accidentally put his name in number 5 or something like that, and then number 6 wins. Then the other person wants the card, and I make sure that I have all these rules written down, and I follow the rules. There's no loyalty to a certain member because he pays more money or spends more money. It's the rules are the way it goes. So I have them all written, and the rule is if you pick the number, that's the number you get, despite what is shown on the list. So it's kind of, so fights do happen, but I have effectively kind of minimized the fighting going on, but it happens rarely, not too much. And I would say that the members of the big three probably haven't seen much of it. So if it does happen, it'll be on the background anyways.
All right, great. Here's a question from Scott. He wants to know, do you have a company that assisted you with your branding or that is assisting you with your branding?
So I actually have someone I met from the Leafs Collectibles group, who is a graphic designer, Patrick Helpert, I believe is his name. A brilliant graphic designer. So he's the one that helped me with the initial Big Three logo. And then moving on to our Instagram, I just hired a graphic designer that was a colleague of mine in school to get it done. So it's not a company, but it's just freelancers that are helping us out.
Right on. And so the next question, this is Brett's, and it kind of leads into what was going to be my sort of final question for you on the Razzing topic, which is, well, he starts off by saying, I assume you're getting decent ROI to this point from a scale standpoint. What are your future goals? And that was my question. What are your future goals for your Facebook group and your Instagram feed?
So I think my favorite part of the Big Three is the community. I've met so many great guys, and everyone is just so respectful and courteous, and everyone loves cards. And we talk about the value of cards, what cards are going to be hot, what cards people need in their PC. So that's kind of the grassroots thing I love about the Big Three. So in terms of scaling it, I don't think we're going to scale it wide and large or anything like that. We're going to keep it the way it is. And I just enjoy the grassroots level of community building that we have in the Big Three. Everyone kind of knows each other. We kind of have like the same type of persons coming into the groups, coming into the Razzes. So I kind of like that idea of it. So I'm keeping the grassroots level of the Big Three Facebook group there. But what we're scaling towards is actually becoming a larger buyer and seller of larger high-end cards. So that's what we're doing in our Instagram channel right now. So what we're doing there is honestly just going big and buying the biggest of the hobby, and just trying to find new owners and brokering deals and scaling that way.
All right. So last question that just popped in my mind. What is the most expensive card you've ever razzed that you can remember?
Most expensive card ever razzed or sold? Or
razzed. That's the topic here.
Razzed. It was the biggest attempt was the Connor McDavid Cup 99 BGS 9. So we were trying to razz it for $35,000 Canadian. We got towards the 20K area. It started to slow down a little bit. It was during the expo time, but it didn't fill. But it ended up selling at the expo for 37K Canadian. So it was actually a deal for the Razzers there. So yeah, we tried, but it didn't fill. So the one that filled was, I think we've had a 15K card probably.
All right, cool, very cool. All right, so seems to be it. That's no more. There's no more questions coming through on the Razzing topic. So let's switch gears now to what I think super interesting, the fact that you actually, like I said earlier, you went out of pocket, you commissioned a study at Queen's University. There was a question earlier that I didn't put on the screen. Someone said that they thought you were a Queen's student. Whether you were or not isn't really relevant to the study, although maybe it's just your alma mater sort of thing. But let's talk about this. So you actually somehow, and I'll let you get into the details, but just a quick summary, you reached out to some PhD students at Queen's University, and you basically said, here's a problem in this hobby that I'm heavily involved in. Can you guys find a solution to this? And that problem being the inconsistency and subjectivity that comes with with grading, with the fact that cards are graded by human beings. And not all graders have the same, or they're not all in the same mood every day. They don't all have the same biases. So things can always be manipulated for the good or the bad of one of their clients or customers. So why don't you tell us a bit about this study, the who, what, where, when, why, and how much did it cost you?
Yeah. Okay. So the start of it happened actually with just relationship building in the hobby. So I started talking to some of my friends in the hobby, Bill Tatsis and Joseph Angelino, and they're like, let's group together and create this project. Let's try to solve some issues in the hobby, and let's try to innovate, right? And I just always had that. We would sit at his bar and speak about these things and how to solve problems in the hobby. So it was always in the back of my mind, and I just started thinking about it more. So then I went to the Nationals in Chicago, and I started bringing it up with high-end dealers, collectors, and I started asking them, "Is this something that you would want?" And surprisingly, some people didn't want it, and some people did want it. Then I went to some big auction houses, big guys in the hobby, big companies, and I asked, "Has this been done before?" And to my surprise, it has been attempted before, and the attempts have failed. Due to business viability, it's a very expensive endeavor. And I was warned actually at the Nationals, like, trust me, this is going to be expensive, firstly. Secondly, you're going to figure out why it's not possible. And I'm stubborn. I took it away as, okay, it might not be possible. We can still give it a shot, though. So
challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. So answering to whoever made that comment, I am a Queen's student. I just graduated my Juris Doctorate at Queen's University Law School. But during that summer, after the Nationals in August, I started working towards my business degree, credits towards my MBA. So the first day of orientation, we had a bunch of new people coming into a class, right? And one guy was actually an engineer, and he worked with something called computer vision, and he introduced himself as someone that worked with computer vision and AI technology. And all the things that I learned through the summer and these conversations at the bar with Bill and Joseph, they came together. And my first meeting with this gentleman was basically, hey, I sell cards. First of all, I bring up cards all the time at parties and everything. So the first thing I thought about was, hey, I sell cards. There's this big problem in cards, and how can we solve this situation using artificial intelligence and computer vision? Computer vision is basically this in-depth processing of objects to figure out flaws and a lot of other mechanisms for it. And he kind of guided me towards telling me that it was viable, and he piqued my interest, and he said, like, this is possible. Let me get you in touch with someone I know. And he got me in touch with an organization at the Queen's University. It's called QMind, and they deal with artificial intelligence engineering apparatuses and products for clients in the real world. So I spoke to a gentleman there named Jeremy, and we went into the conference room, and I brought in PSA cards, Beckett cards, raw cards, brought it all in my little suitcase, and we kind of just got to talking. And I said, is this something that's viable and possible to do? And he told me, look, it seems like a tough project, but we can give it a shot. What is your goal for this project? And at the start there, my goal was to create a full grading system. So that would mean taking the card, people bring you cards, and you can grade them using your artificial intelligence that you've created. Quickly, soon after, you realize that that's not very viable at a business standpoint. The challenges involved with that are essentially capital. Like it's going to take a lot of money. You have to create. Probably getting too far ahead of myself here, but you have to create like a gyro system to check the surface of a card
from different angles.
You have to pinpoint the different factors of centering in each different card, and there's just a lot of things that have problems with it. So then I moved into, can we create an iPhone tool that people can use at home to check centering of their cards? I mean, centering seems like an easier thing. And then I realized, for example, bring in something like this card. it's an easy card to figure out centering on. You just have to look at the borders.
Yeah.
But it's easy for a human to see that. But a computer just looks at this as a raw data, a raw picture. The computer doesn't know that this card is any different than, for example, this Zion card. This Zion card doesn't have any borders. So how is the computer going to see what the difference is between these two? So you have to figure out the data point of what centering is on this card and what centering is on this card. So now you have a lot of factors into play on how you can train a computer intelligence system to see these cards. And the solution to that is to create data sets. You have to have a lot of data on each subset on every card, and you just got to keep feeding the system, and it learns all the data on what is perfect and what is not. The challenges in that is, first of all, you would need to know what a perfect card is, which is hard enough because you can't just with cards like this, it's easy because you can just Photoshop what could be the perfect centering, so you can get a baseline for this card. But for example, a card like even the Matthews, this, like, everyone was they didn't know what was the centering on this card. Is it the line on this SCH here? Is it the upper deck logo? You don't know what the perfect centering is on that card. So you kind of need to have that baseline. So the challenge in that is you kind of want maybe the card companies to come in and give you the data sets on what a perfect card is. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you can get printing plates on cards. Theoretically, a printing plate should be the perfect card.
Right.
But then you get a black label that doesn't match the printing plate. They look completely different. So you don't know what the baseline is. Someone mentioned to me in my group, why don't you get black labels of every card? Obviously, that's probably not possible, but you look at black labels and they're not always perfect either. So then those are the challenges you have, right? So then after I'm like, okay, that's probably not going to work. Let's go to option number 3. Option number 3 was, let's create a tool for people at home using their iPhones for specific subsets. So what specific subsets is Young Guns or SP Authentic or Tim Hortons cards, for example, the cards that most hockey card collectors collect. But now the challenge in that is now you're kind of being intersectional, and you're pointing towards a very niche subsect of the whole community. So now you're not really creating a solution for the hobby in general, just people that collect these 3 specific cards. And then after after that option, I'm just like, maybe there's something else that I can do here. So I started looking into the whole trimming scandal. I said, look, it seems kind of easy that we can create a solution for trimming. Like, if a card is shorter, should be easy to identify. Can we do with an iPhone application? Soon found out you would have to have a comparable cube in the image that shows the measurements of what is objective as the baseline, and then it would have to track the card, and that kind of became a little difficult. And also we found variance in manufactured cards. So there is no baseline in 100 SP Authentic cards. Each one had some differences in measurement, and we also didn't have a data set of trimmed cards to figure out what a trimmed cards look like either. So it's really a data set issue. Theoretically possible if you have infinite amounts of money, but there's a lot of
parts there.
A lot of parts. Like, for example, the surface of this.
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead.
The surface of this Michael Jordan card.
Yeah.
It's a clear card. There's a lot of shine and gloss to it. How do you manage the system to figure out and differentiate that this is a part of the card, or if it's an issue on the card?
Or it's behind the card.
Or if it's behind the card.
Yeah.
That's just an example of the challenges there.
Cool. So that was really great. That was the who, what, where. What about the when? When did this take place, and how long did this study take?
So the study, I got started quick. This is first day orientation. I talked to this gentleman that walked into our class, and by the next month we had it going. We had it started. I paid for the whole the funding of the research. And we had, I believe, 5 computer intelligence people working on the project for 8 months. So
8 months. 8 months.
yeah, so they would work about, I would say 2 to 3 hours a week on it. And they would just look at different options and figure out how to do this. So yeah, I would check in on them. We do Skype calls. I would come into the conference hall sometimes, and they would show me like what's the challenges, what's the issues, what did I want from this project, and yeah.
How much did you spend on this?
So
Of your own money. This is his own money, everybody, too. This guy went out of pocket trying to find a solution for all of us in the hobby, really, because I think the inconsistencies in grading is a pervasive problem across all sports, all countries, all collectors, all investors, all hobbyists, really, anyone involved. How much did you put out of your own pocket for this?
So my cost was actually cheaper than what it would have cost if I didn't go outside of the organization. So I spent $15,000 on the research portion of the project. To take it to operationability, even the baseline software that we created and take it into a commercial product, it would have been a further $100,000. And that was just a baseline operable software that we created right now. And that's just like figuring out centering and edges and corners and surface of SP Authentic, Upper Deck, and Tim Hortons cards. So
Right.
now I look at how the business viability of any card and every card. So it's a big project for sure.
For sure, man, for sure. And I mean, we spoke earlier, and one thing that I think was interesting was that to really make this thing work, it speaks to the data sets issue. You would need copies of every card ever made if the company who would actually purchase and use this technology would be open to grading any and every card, just like PSA, BGS, SGC, just like they do. So that would have been quite the challenge as well. Would it not have been?
Yeah, so I think I was trying to think of ways to maybe make it happen on maybe not even every card, but on a wide scale, maybe create an open source project where people can kind of build into the data set. But even just thinking like one person can't do that, but maybe a business and company theoretically can do that. It is possible if everyone works together for it. But the question I started asking myself when I wanted to answer that question is, does everyone want this? That's a big thing too, that maybe not everyone wants this objective understanding of what a card would grade.
So before you jump into that, because this is an interesting piece that I know we're going to talk about, you call this the gamification aspect. But before you do that, I just want to show everybody, because Karn actually sent me what I guess is basically the executive summary of this study. So I'm going to throw it up on the screen, and you guys can see what he actually paid for. So let's bring that up right now. So guys, this is what this study was called, the Trading Card Vision System. You can see it's got, the authors, the AI students that he worked with, or the PhD students that he worked with. There's the abstract. Basically, I won't read it out loud, or maybe I will. You know what I will? It says this trading card vision system is an application that will automatically determine the physical card quality of trading cards. It's designed to detect edge quality, the logo centering quality in trading cards, to be able to assist in card grading. And then it goes on with some stats. A simple web application was also developed to allow a user to easily interface with the system. So there's an introduction, there's some related works, they defined the problem. They got into methodology, corner detection, logo centering, edge defect detection. The results and discussion then were discussed a little bit, and conclusions and future work and some references. So as you told me, this is just like the executive summary of it, but like this is a professional, publishable type of study that was done with references and all the things that you see when you look at these academic studies. And they also provided you with what was a PowerPoint presentation here. I'm at the bottom of it. I'll run up to the top quickly here, so here's the PowerPoint presentation that was created for it. And I think it just kind of goes through the timeline, the data set, what was used, the overview of components, stages of the system, precise corner locator. These are all words that us card collectors, we don't really have in our vernacular, right? And now all of a sudden, here they are: logo centering detection, 3 stages of a system, intuition, data set pre-processing, model. I mean, this thing just goes on: model, performance, and conclusion. So, and then the limitations, of course. So kind of the main challenges from it. So, I mean, that's pretty awesome. Like, again, I've said it before, you put your money where your mouth is. I think we all kind of can thank you for that. I personally think it's awesome that you did that. So
thank you. Appreciate it.
Way to go, man. Like, thank you on behalf of myself and whoever else will let me on behalf of them say in the hobby. Thank you for doing that. I think it's just really awesome that you did. Here's a question from Dave. He's asking, did you think about simplifying the problem initially by only looking at vintage cards with borders?
Yeah, we started, we thought about doing a border solution. So I actually brought in Pokemon cards because all Pokemon cards have borders on it. So it was a lot more simple to figure out a solution for that. The vintage card direction is not something that we considered, but it's probably something that is actually probably a little easier to do and get done. And there is a lot of archives on vintage cards as well. So that's probably something that we can think about in the future for sure.
Awesome. Okay. And then there's a question that's asked by Chris, but it's too long for me to put on the screen. So I'm just going to kind of read it. And I haven't read it yet, but he says, I have a question regarding AI grading. Do you think digital measurement is something reasonable that grading companies should add to help detect trimming? Obviously, this would require card manufacturers disclosing card sizes to the companies, along with tolerances allowed in production. I mean, I know that a card is 2.5 by 3.5 inches. That's standard size. It has been since the 50s, the late 50s. What do you think of that comment in terms of, is it possible for that to happen? And I do like where he does go on to say that, obviously tolerances would have to be considered as well.
Yeah, so I think we were speaking about it yesterday. So once you bring in tolerance, you're removing the objectivity of the situation. Now it becomes subjective again, right? So now I have to look at the business viability aspect of it all. These graders look at thousands and thousands of cards, and the card companies are creating thousands and thousands of cards. So, and we already see a backlog with grading companies. So if you add another situation where they have to check each card and see if it's trimmed and what the perfect measurement is, and ideally and idealistically, we do want that to occur, but in a business sense, it may not be possible. And if it is possible, then as I mentioned previously, we found that cards straight from the manufacturer have variance in sizes. That's why I think the trimming situation is a little bit scary in a sense. And it is because when you see a trimmed card that passes grading, this is usually not a card that looks trimmed like by just looking at it on the onset.
Because it's still within those tolerances. And yeah. I believe if you even look on the grading standards of the big companies, it even says that they do allow a tolerance for the size of the card. And I mean, you can take a stack of cards and hold them in your hand from various different eras, and you'll feel different sizes just in your fingertips, right?
Yeah.
From the same product.
I can provide probably an example that a lot of people listening here will probably agree with. SP Authentic. Some people have SP Authentic cards that fit in one touches. Yeah. Some people say that they're too large for one touches. I just opened it from a pack. This makes no sense. That's the variance that we see. So that's why I kind of feel a little bad sometimes for graders because it's like it's really, really difficult to catch every card when you're a human, right? And that's why you want to add the computer AI system. But then there's still the issue of variance. So you kind of have to have the card to be objectively one size all the time from the manufacturers.
Yeah.
To have a perfect solution. So that's kind of the challenges involved.
And for that to happen, you got to get into their printing vendors and all that. And I mean, I believe that a lot of these cards are cut. The sheets are not cut one sheet at a time, is my understanding. They will pile up, a bunch of sheets and then bring the guillotine down and chop those up. So if those sheets or forms, as they call them in the manufacturing world, if those sheets actually move a little bit, you're going to see different sizes of cards. And then you also can get into diamond cut where the card isn't cut perfectly square, which I've seen several times on various different cards. So, all right, here's just a comment for you, Karn. Karn Rai, best in the hobby. Let me tell you. Well, I'm sure this is a buddy of yours. Thanks for joining the show.
I'm pretty sure that's Jask.
Jask, welcome to the show. Thank you for giving Karn some love. He appreciates. I appreciate it. Now, Amit, this is by far his favorite episode. He loves the science, and I love when nerds nerd out using card nerdiness. Thank you, Amit. Always happy to nerd out. A couple of wows. Amazing. Like these comments were coming when I was showing the study, by the way. So I think, and then Scott, another thank you for your effort. Here's a comment. Doesn't seem like there would be any motivation on the part of manufacturers if there is such a variation coming directly from the factory line. And I mean,
I thought about that as well, because it kind of pinpoints errors on their part, right?
Right.
The day, and that's why I asked the question earlier: who wants this? Who really does want an objective system? It pinpoints errors on the card. It pinpoints the card might be shorter. It might pinpoint surface errors objectively. Now, if you open up a pack and you put it into this AI system and the system says this card is messed up, I go to the card company and say, look, objectively, this card is messed up. Now they can't really say anything about it, right? Now they have to produce another card to keep you happy. It's just it's the business viability of it isn't there, but the theoretical viability is. It's the business part that scares me a bit of the situation.
Sure. Fair comments. Appreciate it. All right. Name asks, can you find this study on Google Scholar? I don't know what that is. Are you familiar?
Potentially, yeah. I think it's where you upload information. So this was actually presented at an artificial intelligence conference in Colorado. So maybe potentially it's out there, but I'm not privy to that.
Right on. Okay. Here's a question from Carlos, or I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment, but I'm going to read it. He said, because it's too long for the screen, he says, I agree that subjectivity comes into play with tolerances, but I think having a streamlined version of the tech to assist the human graders would catch obvious trimming if it falls well outside the tolerances. That's where the value could be. And I do agree with that, with that, Carlos, but I do, just from following all the threads on especially Blowout regarding the trimming scandal from last year, these trimmers are very sophisticated and they know what the tolerances are, and they're making sure that they're not trimming beyond that tolerance. So, I obviously there are some amateurs, or I don't want to call them amateurs, but there are some people who aren't as good at it, and they would likely be able to get caught by that. Anything to add there, Karn?
Yeah, just the aspect of using it as a tool. So that's kind of the direction that we ended up thinking about going. Use it as a tool for the human instead of replacing the human. That's kind of the philosophical debate as well. Like, do you want to replace the human? So maybe it's a tool that can be used. So that's kind of what we were thinking about doing, just having it as a centering situation, or maybe allowing the computer to look at centering the edges and the corners, but the human does the surface of the card, because that's the hardest and most difficult thing to find a solution for. So yeah, it's possible that we can create tools that help graders to make things more efficient.
Perfect. So, and you mentioned that surface is the hardest. So in our discussion yesterday, you mentioned that corners and edges were the easiest to get around, and it really came down to centering and surface. Those are where truly the biggest challenges lie in the proper technology being developed. And then, of course, if that happens, now all of a sudden you need the capital investment to roll out a service. So awesome. Here's a question that doesn't necessarily relate to the study you did, but Seabass is asking about thoughts on SGC, and I do want to address this because I think I follow a lot of the basketball discussion that goes on the internet, and it seems to me like a lot of these basketball collectors, they don't even know that SGC has been around for longer than PSA. They're one of the originals. They were around long before Beckett was. And I remember being at the National in the mid 2000s, and there were as many cards graded by SGC as there were by PSA. So they've been around a long time. And I think they're just, with all the the controversy, the scandals, the trimming scandals, and of course the wait times, they're now looking at this as an opportunity to come in and say, hey, we want a piece of the market. We want some of your business. And I think it's a great time for them to come in. And I was watching on Cardboard Chronicles, Josh, who runs that YouTube channel. He had one of the managers or one of the guys who runs SGC on his show just last week or so. And that guy addressed the community basically saying, we want your business. He was a youngish guy, but he seemed pretty seasoned and polished for a younger fella. And I think that they do have an opportunity here to get a piece of the market share, piece of that pie. But we have to remember they were around as longer than Beckett's been around for grading. So they're not a new company. They've been around as long or longer than PSA has been. So to the question, thoughts on SGC, my personal thoughts on SGC, Seabass and everyone else, it really comes down to what you like, how you like your cards to look when they're slabbed. That's one thing. I mean, I like a card that I like to look at, and I think slabs do dress up the cards quite nicely. One touches do as well, much more than a top loader does. But I like a slab for a couple of reasons. You get the protection, which other holders offer as well. I get that. But you get the protection, and then you get the information on the card too. So you always have a reference. If you're going to scan it, it's easy for people to understand what this card is. Whereas in a one touch, you may not know what variation it is if you're just showing that front of the card. So that's my take on SGC. Karn, do you have an opinion?
Yeah. First of all, during my business program, I actually spoke to the director of the MBA. And like I said, I'm a card geek and I always talk about cards. Like it's one of those things that I always do. And I was actually speaking to him about the trimming scandal in cards. And I told him about last summer or 2 summers ago, I said, this is the time for the third company, SGC, to come in and take over some market share. It's a perfect opportunity. PSA was going through their thing, and Beckett has backlogs. It's taking too long to grade cards. And the time it takes to grade cards is a reason why even the computer AI idea came in, right? And SGC did that. They marketed well. They changed their label. It looks a lot better. I still have reservations. Like you said, the dress up portion of the grading is what my major reservation of SGC is. It just to me doesn't look as appealing as a BGS holder, or I even like PSA holders. I know a lot of people think they look cheap and plastic, but for me, I do enjoy having like 10 PSA 10s in a row, for example. Yeah. Just the perfectionism of it, I really enjoy it. But I think in terms of the grading standards of SGC, I think they're phenomenal. Like I spoke to Peter Steinberg, who's the gentleman that runs the director of business operations at SGC, and we had a conversation, and it's clear that they know how to grade cards, and they're efficient, and they may be better than Beckett and PSA at grading cards. But it comes down to spending money on how you want your card to look. You're not going to spend $35 to make your card look worse than a Beckett card, right? For example. Right. So my thinking and thoughts on it is great company. I think there's a gap in it. You can get SGC cards, modern cards for cheap. And for example, if they change their labels in the future and they make them look more appealing, potentially you may find cheaper SGC cards that may look better in the future if they do change their labels. So sure. That's my strategy on SGC right now.
Yeah, I agree. The one I see another facet to this too, though. In addition to, you have to like the way your cards present. The other issue is what's the market? How's the market going to react to these cards? So if I have a Wayne Gretzky rookie card or a Michael Jordan rookie card, and I'm going to get this card graded, I want to get it graded by the company that's going to give that card the highest value. Because like it or not, certain grading companies add more value. And, PSA has built their pricing model on that. They charge you based on how much you value your card at, right? Because they know that a card in their slab is going to give you an asset that's worth more money. So they want a piece of that, which I think, there's I can see both sides of that approach. But I think that the biggest challenge SGC has is converting all the people who are currently loyal to PSA or Beckett or PSA and Beckett grading. So I see that as definitely as a challenge. A couple of hellos. Hey, Richie, thanks for joining us. Rich was my guest here a few episodes ago. Nice to see you. Carlos says, hi, Rich. Great. Okay. Thank you, Carlos. And Andy, I still do not see your name. I apologize. Carlos makes another astute comment. Pre-war would be a nightmare if you're talking about standards being all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Speaking of that, I do have one SGC card in my collection. It's one of my favorites. I have a 1933 Babe Ruth, the number 53, the yellow background card in an SGC holder that I picked up several years ago. Sorry to bounce back to this. I wanted to mention this earlier, but just for me personally, it's the only SGC card I have, but it's a special card, and I'm not even tempted to cross it over to another company because I just want to leave it. I love it, and it looks great in that older holder.
What I would add to that is I think SGC looks great for certain cards. It's kind of a thing where it really looks good on certain cards, but certain cards it doesn't. So it's like one of those things where they kind of have to fix their model and make sure that their label looks good on every single card. Maybe switch the case for modern cards and vintage cards because it looks great vintage cards. That's for sure. Yeah,
agreed. Carlos has Carlos, I agree. It's entertaining with some of these, and entertaining in a good way because you can't fault anybody for what they haven't been exposed to or don't know. But I think it's on us that do know to help the people who maybe are newer into the hobby in the last 5 to 8 years or 1 to 8 years type of thing, and let them know SGC's been around. And their reputation among the baseball collectors in the United States, which is really the biggest component of our hobby, was equal to, if not higher than PSA for a very long time. And I don't really know what happened. Well, I think maybe one of the reasons why they kind of lost market share was because PSA was more innovative and they came out with their set registry and other promotions. They have the magazine, the SMR magazine, that really allowed them to pull away from the competition, being SGC. And I don't remember exactly when SGC started to kind of lose share and Beckett came up and gained share. Of course, Beckett had the brand and the name being super recognizable in the hobby, but maybe they saw, hey, maybe there's room for us now that SGC kind of isn't marketing themselves to their full potential. And now I think SGC, being run by younger, more aggressive, more innovative, more imaginative people. The gentleman, I think you said his name was Peter Steinberg. Is that what you said?
Correct.
That was the guy that was on Cardboard Chronicles?
Correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, this guy won me over in that interview. He won me over because this is a guy who is as passionate as anyone I've ever met in the hobby.
Yeah.
Right?
Awesome guy.
Awesome guy. He was an awesome guy. I really liked him after that episode. And it's like you said earlier, Karn, you'll talk about cards anytime, anywhere with whoever will listen to you. I'm the same way. This Peter Steinberg is the same way. You could just tell he's just like us, So it's nice to have somebody like us working for and basically general managing one of the big card grading companies. So I wish them well. I hope that they can give some competition to Beckett and PSA, and we'll see where that ends up. The thing I don't like about it is that I have a very extensive PSA graded collection, and I don't want that to lose value over time because I have significant funds invested in that. So, but
you see the camps like, oh, I don't want SGC sucks or Beckett sucks. It's because whoever has their collection invested in a certain grading company, you don't want the market share to dwindle down. So
yeah, exactly. Scott asked, what about MNT? So if anyone doesn't know, MNT is a smaller Canadian grading company out of somewhere in Ontario. Been around for probably 3 to 4 years now, I'd say.
Yeah.
And, I don't really have many comments on MNT. I don't own any of their slabs. I've seen them set up at shows. They walk around the show and they give out their flyers and they're trying to promote their business. And
two big cards in MNT.
There you go. 2 of their slabs. Their slab's very Beckett-esque, if you will. That kind of looks and feels like a Beckett slab, but they have their own branding, which is actually quite nice. I think their biggest challenge is just branding and brand recognition in the hobby and credibility as well, because Beckett has credibility from the magazine. They've been in the business since the early 80s. PSA is just, they were the first to market really or SGC. MNT is brand new, and I think that their biggest challenge is really has been and might continue to be credibility. And not to say they don't grade well or they don't grade tough, but will the market embrace them to make that business a viable going concern? I don't know the answer to that.
For me, it's core competency. They have to provide something that's better than PSA and Beckett, whether that be pricing, whether it be a better holder, or whether it be customer service or whatever it is. They have to find their niche and figure out a way to attack that strategy, I think. So, but maybe in the future that they can work towards that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Justin, if you're still there, when did this sucker start? We started an hour and 10 minutes ago. This whole episode will be available on the Sports Cards Live YouTube channel shortly after we end it, which will be, in about half an hour or so, unless we end earlier or go longer. But all the episodes are available on the YouTube channel. Everybody, if you're willing to, please go there. Please subscribe, like the videos. It's kind of cool. Just I like seeing the subscriber count go up. I think it was at about 175 before this episode, and I needed to get to 100 to get a dedicated URL for the YouTube channel. And then I also learned you have to be around for 30 days. And I'm not sure what day I created this, but I don't think I'm at 30 days yet. So one of these days, maybe tomorrow, I'll be able to do that. But if everybody doesn't mind, please go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, leave comments there if you want, whatever. Appreciate it very much. Thank you very much. All right, Barry has a comment. Upper Deck, Beckett both have massive struggles, but their names are iconic in the hobby. Brand names are huge. Yeah, I mean that's just the fact. That's just the fact. That, first mover advantage is something that is present in every industry, and those guys were there. I mean, PSA especially, and it's not first mover advantage is big in a new business or even a new industry or a new region. But in this case, it's like you've just got these companies that are so entrenched. To knock them out of those footholds, it's going to be tough. SGC, I think, has the best shot by a mile because they have been around since the early to mid 90s. So, and they have a lot of loyal following in the US, especially in the vintage baseball area. So.
And to add to that, if they continue to get more customers, how are they going to deal with those same massive struggles, right? Because if they get more cards coming in, they might start seeing those same issues come into play as well. So,
well, Peter did address that exact topic on Cardboard Chronicles, where he said, we are going to move into a bigger space to accommodate the more staff, more grading staff, because if you're going to send us the cards, we're going to hire people to do that. Like they want to grow their business. They want to grow their footprint. And I think they're going to. He convinced me. So I guess we'll see how time will tell, right? Time will tell on them and on MNT if they are going to survive and make a going concern out of this. And I wish them all the best. They're a Canadian company, which is great, but just by virtue of being a Canadian company, you're so much smaller than the American companies. It's just the way the world works, right? Okay, here's a comment from Justin. I do like how PSA grade gets put in a slab that is uniform across. Beckett loses its eye appeal once it drops below that 9.5 because of the color of the flip, right? The flip is the industry term for the label that goes in the slab. So once those flips turn color, I know a BGS 8 or lower, is it 8 or 8.5 or lower, is white.
Yeah, like this, like it turns.
Yeah, yeah. Right. It just looks cheap, Yeah. But that also allows them to give that kind of premium look to the golds and the blacks and the silvers for that matter. So, all right. That's about it. Yeah, there's other comments coming through. Blockbuster was iconic too, and they're no longer around. True, but their technology also died, right? It's not so much about the brand there. Yeah, Barry says they may both end up like Blockbuster, possibly, but I think we'd have to stop grading cards for that to happen. Coke and Pepsi, tough to challenge them, 100%.
PSA is trying to add chip technology into their slabs. So with like an RFID situation where you can scan the chip using your phone and it brings up the population report and adds the picture of the card. So they're starting to scan the cards and add to the population report. Yeah, so that's an advancement that they're doing right now.
I've noticed that on the back. I'm just flipping through a couple that I happen to have on my desk with me here. I don't think any of these are old enough, or sorry, new enough to have that RF. Is it called the RFID chip thing? But where you can read it with your computer, with your phone, and it'll give you all the details. Yeah, I've seen that on some for sure. So awesome, man. Well, listen, honestly, that kind of brings to the end of the plan program. I don't have any more questions that I was planning to ask you. Anything that you can think of that I might have just kind of forgotten to discuss?
Yeah, no. Just in general, I think it's great if we can continue to innovate and build a hobby. I think this hobby is it's a great pastime, and it's more than that. We have such passionate collectors, and I really miss the expo, and really want to give back to the expo and just speak to dealers, make some deals. And I think this card thing is going to stick around for a while. I know there's a lot of parallels to the junk wax era, but I think globalization and how much money is involved in the market now, this is something that's here to stay. So I think people should take it seriously, and everyone should welcome new people to enter the card market. I think there's a little bit of that fear in the card market. It's like when you like that low key song, but then it goes mainstream, and you hate it now, right? It's like we don't want that principle to happen in the card game. We want it to grow.
Is that called the Nickelback effect, or
the Nickelback effect? Yeah, we don't want that to happen in the card community. We want to welcome new people in.
I agree.
And I understand that can cause like value discrepancies, and it can create maybe the card that you're chasing go from $400 to $800. But at the same time, when value is in the ecosystem and environment, you make the business viability of creating AI systems more possible. That's when the innovation comes into play, and you have a market and an environment that allows for that type of innovation to come into the ecosystem there. So I think it's just we should all, as a collecting community at the grassroots level, just welcome everyone to come to the card collecting world.
Right. Let's embrace the young collectors. Let's embrace the investors who are coming in and throwing big money at it. I see a lot of comments, people saying, all these investors are coming in, throwing all their money at the cards. Now I can't afford them anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, for some people, it's a bad thing. I guess if you hold those cards, it's a good thing. If you don't hold them, it's a bad thing because they maybe are permanently out of reach for you now.
And there's always a card that's overseen and overlooked, right? So it makes it more fun to find those gaps. But I do understand, like I am sympathetic to the collector that may have a list of cards that they want to go through in the next year or two to find, and then they get to it and it shoots up quadruple value. And look, not like that's hard to take and handle because it's like you have a budget going. You get mad at the investors and the flippers that are coming into the market, but at the same time, there's a lot of fun gaps to find in the market, and it makes it a funner chase. It makes it's just more vibrant, and more people in the community to speak to about things, and a lot more topics to talk about. So I think
and more content coming out online and YouTube and Instagram and all that too. Someone asked, Peter asked, I thought one of the comic grading companies coming into cards as well. And Barry does answer correctly. They are CGC. So I read somewhere just yesterday that CGC is coming into grading, but there were questions whether or not they were going to be grading sports cards in addition to gaming cards. And my immediate thought was they'd be stupid not to. Why leave that potential on the table? If you're going to grade Pokemon and Magic cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, hey, you've got the technology, you've got the staff, you've got the capital equipment to slab cards. You'd be silly not to embrace everybody who wants to use your service. So they would have a chance to break in because they already have an existing clientele, they have a reputation, and they're an established company that probably has some capital available to invest in broadening their brand. So I think that's going to be an interesting one to watch. I actually really think. Andy, still no. Another question from Dave: is KSA still around, or are they just old slabs that I see for sale? Dave, they are still around. I know they have two branches. One's out of BC and one's out of Ontario, and they're still there. They set up at Expo. They slab on the spot at Expo. If you're ever set up next to them, your ears will hurt bad after the show because the high pitch that it takes to sonically seal these slabs. I feel bad for the people that are set up right behind them or right next to them, but KSA is definitely still around. Brett, so see what happens in these shows, Karn, is that as soon as I announce we're going to maybe wind it up, all these comments start coming in. So we'll keep on going here. We'll keep on going. Brett says, innovation and creativity. Do you think it will be rooted more in the collectors or the producers of the product?
I think it depends on that the market situation, right? If we have more value coming into the market and more buyers of cards, then the companies and producers of the product are going to say, hey, our revenues are going up. There's more money for research and development. Let's create a game changer here. So I think that would push the producers of the product to be more innovative in a sense. But at the same time, maybe collectors, I'm a collector here, and sorry that my eBay item is at
Go ahead. You warned me this, guys.
3 seconds, it's all good. But on the collectors, like I'm a collector here, and I'm looking into ways to innovate. So I think it's just a situation of, I think the forums, for example, there's a lot of negativity in forums all of the time. I think if you go into, say, as I said, I'm in a lot of markets. If you go into like the Pokemon market, for example, everyone's always talking about how to create a positive change in the market, how to innovate, how to create data sets, and let's see ways to make this thing better. I go into sports card forums, it's always about, oh, that card's trimmed, or this guy screwed this guy over, this guy's a scammer, this or that. I think as a collective community, if we can have this brain trust where we have a goal and all of us combine together to create innovation in the market, it's very much possible. But for that to happen, everyone has to be on board, and we need to create this attitude change in the market. So I think the producers of the product for now, but collectors maybe can win it out.
Yeah, and I think, that question, I wasn't sure, Brett, if that question was more to do with, and Karn as well, if that question was more to do with the grading companies or the card producers. I think the topic being grading might have been grading companies, and I think there are various ways that they could innovate to grow and to maybe, and even again, go watch the Cardboard Chronicles interview with Peter Steinberg from SGC, because he talks about what they're doing, which are some of the things sounded awesome to me that I've never seen from PSA or BGS. So, and I don't remember what they are specifically, but I remember thinking, wow, that's impressive. That would be cool. So I do recommend people go watch that and hear this guy speak, especially if you want to hear from a guy. He's 25 years old, this guy, but he's a seasoned 25-year-old, and he's again, on top of being super passionate, he's well-spoken, and he's innovative. He's creative. He's got what these younger people these days have. And I'm not that much older, but it's just, it was a breath of fresh air, to be honest. So I do recommend you guys go watch that. As far as innovating card wise, and I don't want to get into that right now because that's not really the topic, but I always say, a card is 2.5 by 3.5 inches. There's not a lot of real estate there to work with. So, I always see it on message boards, whether it's Hobby Insider, Blowout, Sport Card Forum. People are always saying they're not innovating enough. We need more competition so they'll innovate more. I don't know what's left for them to put on a card. You're talking about, it's like 8.25 square inches. What more can you do with 8.25 square inches? I don't know.
The funniest part of that all is the hockey card community is negative towards the card company in the market right now. But then you go into the basketball community, and they're negative towards their card company, and they want the other card company in the hockey market to come back to basketball. And then it's just like
hockey wants Panini, basketball wants Upper Deck.
Yeah,
right? Everybody wants Tops, because we all want Tops Heritage, or at least I do. Right? So
yeah, we just I think it's grass is greener on the other side type of situations. And I think I for example, I love like Allure. Allure looks really good to me. I don't know why it doesn't catch on, but I think if that card was in basketball and there's a Zion Allure 1/1 autograph, that would be $100,000 card. But for the hockey market, we are very conservative in what we like. We like our certain brands, and that's it. So it's hard to innovate when you don't have that motivation to innovate either, because anytime a new product comes out, there's a lot of negativity towards it anyways.
Every product has negativity. If anyone out there is ever, and HI members watching, don't take this the wrong way, but if you're ever looking to get a good dose of negativity, visit the message boards, all of them in the hobby. They are just overrun with it. Has been my experience, and I own one of those websites, and it's my biggest beef with it is just the constant complaining and negativity towards anybody and everybody. And I understand a lot of people have, you know, legitimate claims against the card companies for, but if you open one box of cards and you don't get a hit, you know, that company doesn't deserve to go out of business. You know, going in, you're taking a gamble. If you open a case and you don't get the best case hit possible, it's not the card company's fault that you didn't get it. You just got the case that didn't have the best case hit possible.
The market has to create the value, right? The reason why Mosaic basketball is getting like every Walmart is sold out is because the market itself has created value for base cards. It's created value for the third tier prospect, the fourth tier prospect. If Series 1 comes out and there's 15 young guns that have value, the same thing would occur. Everyone would go out and buy Series 1 young guns, right? So it's a situation that the market also has to support the cards that are coming out.
Right. The card companies are also at the mercy of the quality of the rookie content each year. That is pretty well recognized and understood by this hobby, that rookies drive the hobby year to year. So when there's a weak rookie year, everybody wants more. You know, in hockey, they want more Gretzky, Crosby, and Ovechkin. And in basketball, well, they can't get Jordan and Panini, but they want more of those big stars whose autographs sell for big dollars. But that costs the card companies more money. Anyway, that's another episode for another time. There's a question that came in. I'll put it up on the screen here. This person is asking, can you tell me more about your background? You mentioned you were in law. Like to hear a bit more about that. Anything you want to say to that, Karn?
Yeah, just completed my law school journey, 3-year program. So I'm actually moving towards something completely different than cards in general, and I'm going with a personal injury. So I actually have a job lined up at a firm, just waiting for this COVID situation to clear up a little bit.
Perfect. Brett makes a nice comment. It's more that tennis match, offense versus defense, who is pushing the industry forward. There's a lot of great ideas coming from guys like Karn. Fantastic conversation. Thanks, Brett. Thanks for taking part in the discussion tonight. Yeah, I agree here with Scott. Inserts and parallels, acetate and color. That's what we need more of. That's what I love. Shiny inserts.
I love inserts and parallels. I think that's what the hockey card community kind of has to move towards, enjoying and understanding the level of how fun it is to collect parallels. I love collecting parallels. And I think when you see it on the market, you see a lot of negativity about parallels in the market. And I say, you know what? It's one of my favorite things to chase, like O-Pee-Chee Platinum.
Yeah.
The rainbow I completed was the autographed set of Matthews and the non-autographed set of Matthews. It was the most fun I had in my hobby career. So I think we need parallels for sure.
I agree. I like parallels to a degree. I'm not a big fan of 25 versions of the same card, but I'm a fan of maybe. I mean, some are, hey, and that's fine, right? That's the beautiful thing about this hobby. We all have our own preferences. We all approach it in our own unique and distinct way. I'm happy when there's maybe 5 or 6 or 7 parallels, 10 as a maximum for me. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to hate on a product that has more. I'll just pick those few parallels that to me are the most pleasant on the eyes, the ones that I like to look at the most, and I'll go after those ones if I find the players that I'm interested in. I
think in hockey, maybe max 12 parallels per card is what I've seen. You go to basketball, you're looking at 41, 44.
See, that just becomes yeah. Like, how do you even stay on top of it? Then that's just tough. I mean, thinking about even Beckett magazine, like price guides. How do price guides stay on top of that? It's got to be really tough. PLJ says everybody knows if the ROI is not 200%, it's not a great product. That's a tongue-in-cheek comment, but I hear what you're saying, Pierre-Luc, for sure. Richie asks, do you think KSA will ever be realized as a grader? So, I mean, I'll start, Karn, but I'm going to come to you too. I mean, I think they are, Richie. I think they are realized as a grader. I don't know that they're realized as a grader that puts out a great product and therefore commands market share. And my experience with KSA, I'll put it out there. 2 things. One is I've bought cards in KSA and I have crossed them over to PSA. So I bought a 1923 Howie Morenz William Patterson rookie. To me, one of the greatest cards in the hobby, hockey-wise at least. I bought it as a KSA 5, and I crossed it over to PSA. I don't know, probably close to 10 years ago, and it came back a PSA 3. And I was happy with that because I wanted the uniformity in my collection. But I've got more stories about 8s coming, KSA 8s coming back as PSA 6s. I've never crossed one over to the same grade, but I've heard stories where they have. The other challenge I think KSA has is that I've literally held their case in my hand and just pulled it apart. There was nothing stopping me from just opening it up with my hands. So I think their product is flawed. The quality of their case or their whatever equipment they're using to seal those cases, I think leaves something to be desired. That is my biggest issue with KSA. What's your take?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. My first card I ever graded in 2003 was the Rick Nash Young Guns by KSA. So I think it's like a great a beginner grading situation because they grade on site at the Sports Card Expo. But as a Realize, I think you mean Realize as in, are they going to battle with PSA and Beckett and SGC? I don't see that happening. Like you, I agree. It's a little bit of a flawed product there.
And they're also, again, like MNT, they have the challenge of being a Canadian company, which is going to make it almost impossible to break into that U.S. market, really, and take on the big guys that are there right now. Yeah, Scott says we don't need 25 versions of the same numbering. Yeah, I hear that. And then Brett says there's some parallels out there that aren't desirable, they're forced. Maybe a question for a future guest. I think he's speaking to Leaf products there. And we'll talk to Brian Gray about that on Saturday, who will be my guest. And don't forget that, guys. Brian Gray, owner of Leaf, a very outspoken and entertaining and really just an all-around nice guy. I've known Brian on a personal level for several years now. I've known him from being at the National, had been in his poker game there a couple times. And he's an animated guy. He's a collector. He's an investor. He's a producer, a manufacturer. He's a flipper. He does it all. And he'll be talking on Saturday about what's going on at Leaf and what other sports card endeavors he's working on. Going to be super interesting, if not just to hear this guy speak. He's always very entertaining. So check that out on Saturday, guys. And also, if you see the banner, the ticker at the bottom right now, the expo, the Sports Card Expo online edition, June 5th and 6th, go to the website, sportcardexpo.com. And see when Steve actually has his first announcement or is starting to accept vendors, or will start describing how that's going to work. I'm not sure how it's going to work yet, but he'll get that on there soon. So you guys should certainly check that out. Sam has a comment. KSA is legit, especially from Vancouver's location. So I have an issue with that comment because when you're running, and I met the Vancouver rep or owner of the Vancouver branch at the West Coast Sport Collector Convention in November, and I found it odd that they're running two different branches. And so I believe grading separately and kind of representing the company separately. I see a disconnect there. And the fact that you can actually say that it's legit from one location and not the other, that concerns me. But you also say KSA is coming a long way to improve. And I think that says improve. I hope they do. I wish them the best. I have nothing against KSA. I just want to see them step up and improve their holder, number one. That's the most important thing. I bought a set of cards in their holders once at Expo. It was that same 1923 Patterson set, a different version of it. Or sorry, it wasn't the one I bought way back, but this was just a couple years ago. And you hold those cards in the slab, and if that slab goes like, kind of goes, if you're looking at it, but it goes back like that, the card was sliding out of the four corners it was supposed to be in, potentially damaging the edges of the card and the surface. Completely unacceptable, in my opinion, and that needs to be addressed before I will ever do business with them. But that's just the fact of what I've seen. So, okay, I'll keep going through some questions here. Karn, how's your time? Did you get that card on eBay?
No, I lost it.
Lost it. Damn, by a lot?
No, like $50.
All right. Here's a comment. I will say after this podcast, I'm less confident in the hobby. Definitely not the goal of this show. With Razzes and the contamination of grading companies, it's hard to know what is true north. What's your guide? My guidance on that, Bon Halen, is that first of all, I don't see anything really wrong with the Razzes. If you want to partake in them, that's on you. Everyone approaches it differently. So if you like the gambling aspect, I mean, let's face it, if you're breaking wax, you're gambling. You're getting something at the end of the day that is tangible. You're going to get some cards, but you might put out $150 on a box of cards and walk away with $30 worth of cards or 10. Meanwhile, you could get 1,000 with a Razz. You have a 1 in 10 say shot of winning something that's quite valuable. And if you're a gambler, and a lot of people are, then why stop them from doing that? I certainly don't see that as contamination. I find that word offensive in that use, actually. So the contamination of grading companies. Whenever you're dealing with human judgment, you're going to have subjectivity, and you're not going to have consistency because it is human. So contamination is a strong word for that. There could be some favoritism happening, but I don't have any evidence of that. So it's tough to say. My guidance is to look for the positives in the hobby, collect what you like, find things you like. Don't go into Razzes if you don't like gambling. That's
everyone.
That's super easy. There should be no issue there. And if you think that there's contamination in the grading companies, don't get your cards graded. Simple as that. It's not for everybody. So approach the hobby in the way that works for you. Otherwise, and I don't want to push people out, but otherwise get out. If you don't like it and you're going to spread negativity in the hobby, I personally don't want you in it. I want positivity in the hobby, and people who are, at least if you have issues with things going on in the hobby, it's fine to discuss them, but let's talk about solutions and not just, I don't want to swear, but let's not just crap all over things all the time. And I find that there's a lot of that in the hobby. Karn, anything on that?
Contamination of grading. The whole podcast is actually to try to find a solution to the contamination of grading. So I think it makes sense.
Yeah, Karn actually, I don't know if you were here at this part of the show, Bon Halen, but Karn actually put out $15,000 of his own hard-earned money, some of it from Razzing, to help improve the world of grading. And I think that as someone who runs a professional Razz business, if I can call it that, Karn, we actually owe him some gratitude for trying to help us all by finding ways to improve one of the parts of the hobby that isn't perfect. So we'll leave it at that. Sorry, I had this on the screen. There are some products with 40 parallels, and hockey fans complain about sets with 6 or 7. Fact.
Yeah, fact.
Carlos says, check out late 90s Topps Tech parallels on steroids. Basically, the point being that parallels have been around for a long time. Wayne, who was a guest on our showcase last Sunday and sold some cards through it. Very awesome. And congratulations, Wayne. And thank you for taking part. He's not a grader, but I did some through the store with MNT, and my customers were very happy. And at the end of the day, that's what's important. The collectors are happy with the product. MNT slabs are second to none. In my opinion, their slab is beautiful. It's strong. I mean, I've only had a couple in my hands. Karn, what do you think about their slab versus Beckett's slab or PSA's slab, and KSA's for that matter?
Yeah, I think the slab itself is beautiful. And as someone that might be a first-time grader or something, I would not see any issues with this slab at all. Like it's a pretty good-looking slab. There's no issues with it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. It's pretty sturdy. Cardboard. Jeremy, have you reached out to any of the grading companies to appear on your podcast? Not yet, but I do have friends in a couple of them. I've got a friend at BGS who I am going to reach out to, see if he's willing to join, or if the company will let him. We'll find out. I don't really have anyone that I'm close with at PSA anymore. I used to, but they're no longer there. So I have not reached out to them or MNT or KSA, but I would be happy to have any of them on, SGC as well. I mean, these are all people who are players in this hobby. We all have a stake in it to one degree or another. So yeah, I'd be happy to have them on for sure. Darcy, welcome, man. How far along has the case gone with authorities with PSA? I'm not qualified to answer. I know that that you can find that information. The U.S. courts do have this stuff available. You can search it. I don't know where things are at with that. Karn, do you have any idea where things are at with that whole trimming scandal from last year? I know there is a class action suit coming out, but I don't know much more.
I read the statement of proceedings and the situation arising from it. There's aspects of price manipulation and things of that nature. I think there was an update that occurred 2 days ago. So there's Law of Cards is the Twitter account, I believe, but he posts all the updates involving the case. So I think there was an update about 2 to 3 days ago.
So check that out. Say that Twitter handle again. Law
of Cards or Law in Cards, something around that.
Yeah, I forget the gentleman's name. I think he's a writer. He's a pretty
Paul Lesko, I think is his name.
Paul Lesko. That's right. Yeah, check him out. I agree here. Peter has to be consistent across the company. I believe we're getting behind in comments now, but I believe that had to do with the West Coast versus East Coast KSA. Let's see what Brett had to say. Interesting comment by Von Halen. I think there's a ton of great things with this hobby. Graded cards aren't my thing. Neither are Razz's. There's so much more out there to explore and enjoy. Exactly. Thanks, Brett. The case is maybe a year old at this point, Darcy, going to be many more months before anything is likely done. Well, everything moves slow in courts, definitely. Here's an interesting comment from Sam. Vancouver's head guy at KSA is apparently from one of the big competitors. That's interesting, something I didn't know. He actually came and introduced himself to me at the Vancouver show in November, and that didn't come up. If he would have told me that, I would have had a much longer conversation with him. I can tell you that much for sure. I
heard the same about Mint as well, I believe.
Jeremy doesn't like hobby pigeons. I don't really know what a hobby pigeon is, but if it's just constantly spreading of negativity, true that, Chris. True that. Yeah, Mitch. Exactly, Mitch. Don't be the problem, be the solution. I mean, we're pulling these cliches out from everywhere right now, but I 100% agree. Like, you know what?
I think we're part of it. I think people need to stand up for being the solution instead of the problem. So I think making comments like that is perfect.
Yeah. Richie says he'd never heard of KSA before coming to Expo, and that's because they're a small Canadian company, but they've been around since the 90s. This might surprise you or some people, but back in this goes back to probably 1998, 97, 98. I was actually in discussions with the then owner of KSA of buying the company and being KSA. I'm glad I didn't for various reasons, like income potential and all that. But in any event, it was something I thought about doing a long time ago. But Richie, yeah, they're just this. They don't have any. You don't see their cards at the National ever. You see them at Expo. You see them quite a bit at Expo. A couple of the prominent vendors there have showcases filled with them. Guys like Jason Martin, guys like Brian Wentz of BMW, they've got showcases filled with very valuable cards in KSA cases. I would have to really sit there and watch their booth all weekend to know if any of them are selling. I just do not know. We got more comments coming here, Karn. You good to still go?
Yeah, I'm good for it.
All right, let's look at Roddy's comment. Great. I'm going to put my head above it. Graders are the highest paid position at PSA. I don't think they risk their jobs by giving favoritism. I agree with that, Rod. I think it's just human element that as long as humans are grading, there's possibility there will be different grades each time you send a card in. I mean, you said it. You said it right there. Nothing really more. Von Halen, thank you for taking part in the show. Really appreciate it. Sorry if I seem to come down hard on you, but the word contamination just kind of threw me off a little bit there. Jason, buddy of mine, I like MNT graded cars. Yeah, their slabs are beautiful. As long as they're going to grade consistently and and added value, and that's not for everybody. Not everybody wants value added to their cards by grading them. I do. I'll admit it. I love my cards. They're like my babies. And I've got 2 young kids. They're my babies. My cards are my other babies. Like it's just this weird thing. I love my cards and I want them to present well. I want them to preserve well. And I want them to appreciate and value well as well, because I've got a chunk of my capital invested in them. So I need it to be, I need it to be for that value to maintain. I want it to be. It would certainly be nice if it does. Here, Von Halen. I don't think slamming questions is the right approach. I've been collecting for 25 years and I'm a strong proponent of collecting. I hope the questions aren't frowned upon and that we can continue. Yeah, certainly can. I just, I didn't mean to slam your question. It was the word contamination that, I don't like a lot of negativity. I'm all about discussion, but I want solutions. I want to talk about solutions. If you're going to slam something, propose something that can actually make it a little bit better. That's just how I am. Yeah, let's continue enjoying the hobby. We all approach it the way that we do. And I'm with Brett. Healthy conversation is good. And please don't take offense to me having my opinions. I'm doing this show, but I got my opinions and I feel like I'm entitled to have them. And I can express them too. So, and if we don't agree, that's fine too. If anyone doesn't like something I say, that's fine. Let me know. And then get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. Let me know. And I'm always open to discussion. And you know what? Another thing is just, I kind of pride myself in being open-minded. I don't know everything there is to know. And my brain can't consider all of the different possibilities of analyzing a situation. So if I miss something, I want to be kind of informed. And if I learn of a theory that makes more sense in my current existing theory, I'll make that new theory mine as well. And we'll join forces. So let's do that. Let's join forces. Graded cards give you a view of what's on eBay. Okay, Richie, I don't really know what you mean, but I'm sure in your head, that makes sense. There I go. Not slamming your question, Richie. We have a relationship that I can just tell you what's on my mind. Collect what you like. Respect fellow collectors who are passionate. Don't get personal or judgmental. Haters, take your ball and puck and go home. Fair enough. Pigeons poop on everything. Well, okay, let's just go through all this stuff here. Darcy wants to know, Karn, do you do basketball?
Yeah, I do. I do quite a bit of basketball. I actually sold one of the biggest modern basketball cards in the last week. So that was kind of an interesting sale there.
What was it?
The LeBron James Gold Refractor Topps Chrome Rookie.
Is that out of 10?
Say that again?
Is that numbered out of 10?
It's out of 50.
50.
It's a LeBron James out of 50 rookie. So it's pretty huge.
What did that sell for?
It was 6 figures, more than 100, less than 300, but it was around there.
Wow, that's amazing. Here's a question back to your razzing. How would you handle razzing a card $50,000 plus? Would you insist on certain delivery standards since you're personally insuring transactions? I don't remember you saying that you're personally insuring transactions, but do you want to speak to that?
I actually do personally insure some transactions, like on the lower end cards. Say if someone, I had a situation like last year, someone didn't receive their card. I didn't even tell the owner. I just gave the winner of the card the money. I'm just like, honestly, it's just easier that way. And I save $2 per Razz for insurance circumstances of that nature. And in terms of a $50,000 Razz sale, I think earlier on someone was asking about scaling to that major card. If it was a big card like that, I would probably be the one that owns the card. So it would be based on my ownership of the card. I wouldn't just Razz someone else's card like that.
Fair. Mac K, hello from SoCal. Good show, guys. Thanks, Mac K. Nice to have someone from SoCal watching. Appreciate you coming on. Here's a question. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to throw it up. Paul Cashman says, perks to grading are eBay online gives a little more certainty in what you're bidding on. As long as the number comes up in their pop report, I don't have to worry about a card and the fuzzy Sasquatch type picks. Yeah, you know what? I mean, that is really the essence of grading. That is the whole reason why it came about in the first place, because with the advent of the internet in the early mid 90s, all of a sudden people are buying cards sight unseen from remote locations on eBay and other various formats or platforms. And it gave you something to rely on that you would actually know what you're getting. And that's really what grading is about. Giving you an idea that, if I buy a card and the guy puts a picture of it that might not even be a good picture, but even a good picture sometimes can hide a crease, a light crease, or a surface defect, or something on the back of the card, whatever it may be that isn't obviously disclosed. And sometimes the sellers don't even notice them. I mean, that's happened to me before. I've sold a card that was damaged. I didn't even realize. And then the person gets it and they're like, hey, this card's damaged. I'm like, oh man, I apologize. I didn't even realize it. Send it back. I'll send you your money back. No problem, And then I go to the scan and I see, oh crap, there it is. How did I miss that? That's happened to me. And I'm not in the tens of thousands of eBay transactions, but I've certainly sold my share of cards in person. That can happen. So that's what grading is really all about, giving you some sense of assurance on what you're getting. And, That's pretty important. And that's why it's never going to go away, because the internet's not going away and the global economy is not going away. It's only getting bigger. And in our hobby, with so many more people in, across the pond, especially Asia, collectors in Asia and South America, I don't know, I'm not flying there to buy a card. So I want to know what I'm getting. And that's why I do rely on my PSA, not, I won't say my, but on a PSA slab, a BGS slab, an SGC slab, and then to a lesser extent, the other companies we've talked about, but hopefully that will go to be coming to a greater extent at some point. Anything on that, Karn? Sorry, I kind of maybe covered it, but.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
Rod wants to know, Karn, oh, where was it? Here we go. No, not that one. Karn, was that a BGS 9.5 LeBron Gold Refractor out of 50?
Yeah, True Gem as well.
True Gem as well. Amazing, amazing. Comment from Sam, keep killing it, Jeremy. The show fills my gap of missing hockey. That's such a compliment, Sam. You don't know how good that makes me feel. Thank you so much. I just honored to be able to offer this. I started doing this show because I was like, you know what? I'm taking in all this content. I'm watching YouTube videos. I'm on Instagram all the time. And there's a lot of awesome content out there. And, I started because I wanted to sell some cards. So I just did a live broadcast in the one of the vintage hockey groups. And I did a ton of business from it. And I thought, hey, that was fun. And then people were messaging me saying, hey, you know what? That was pretty entertaining. You should do it more often. Well, okay. I got the time. I may as well start something up. So thank you, Sam, for that. I truly appreciate that comment. Rich says, what do you think the expo will be like if there is one in the fall? What do you think, Karn?
It's gonna be super interesting to see. I think that's one of the best things about cards. It's the globalization aspect of it, the grading aspect of it. We can buy things online, so the card prices effect hasn't been there yet. But in terms of the sports card expo, people are going to be a little bit more weary about touching people's cards and walking into each other and just a crowded space. I'm not very optimistic it's going to happen as soon as we think it's going to be, but I really hope it does. I hope that psychological aspect of everyone wanting to be with one another and being close to one another is there. And so it'll be interesting to see within the next year how things play out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think I certainly want it to happen. Whether or not it happens November 13th to 15th remains to be seen. And on the episode I did on Saturday with the owner, Steve Menzie, and Chris Carlin as well, they both said, they want to time that show to coincide with one of Upper Deck's major releases. And the way things are looking right now, it might be tough for Upper Deck to get Series 1 out for that November, especially if there's no hockey. Now all of a sudden there's no Young Guns in that set, which drives Series 1 and is a big driver at Expo. So I can easily see Expo either, if there's hockey, I think we'll see it. I think we'll see the Expo if hockey can start in, early to late October, we can possibly have that show still. I think it'll be different though. I think, you're going to see lots of hand sanitizer all over the place. You're going to see people are going to spend as much time washing their hands as they are touching cards. And maybe there will be fewer attendees because people are just going to be paranoid that the virus is still out there. And the other thing is that we don't know if there's going to be a second wave. So it's tough to really know what's going to happen that far down the line. I think if you're really wanting to plan for something that's going to happen for sure, well, there's no for sure ever, but would be the next Spring Expo. That's the one I'm looking forward to. But also, guys, watch for what Steve Menzie is doing with his sports card online edition on June 5th and 6th. In the absence of shows where we can go to in person, I turned to content. I started creating some, and even what we did this showcase on Sunday, we had 10 vendors showing cards, and I think most of them sold cards. That means people were buying cards virtually through a virtual type of show. So that was an awesome experience. I had a blast doing it, and probably going to do more. Hint, hint. Brett has a question for you, Karn. What card set or product drew you into the hobby? You got a real positive energy and excitement about collecting, which I concur. What drew you in?
So yeah, the the first I still remember the first big card I got was actually in Vancouver. My first hobby box. I was 10 years old. My parents gave me one gift to purchase in my trip, and I saw a hobby box at London Drugs, like the randomest place ever, and it was 2002, 2003 Series One. Opened the box on the plane back to Toronto. Pulled the Rick Nash super short print Young Guns. I didn't even have top loaders or plastic sleeves or anything. I just like carried it home. So I think that was like the first set that really got me into it. And my brother used to collect hockey cards, basketball cards. So he always left me cards behind. So I would just always just look at all his cards. So that's kind of like what drew me towards it. And when I pulled that Rick Nash card, I forced my brother to take me to my first sports card expo. And then first card I graded was that card, and it was with KSA. So, yeah.
So that Rick Nash Young Guns, that's an 0203 card. So you've been in the hobby for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, it's been quite some time.
All right. So listen, we're coming up on 2 hours, which is pretty long. So I'm going to run through some comments and then we're going to wrap up. All right. So Jason says, I'm starting to grab graded cards more often now. I like visual appeal and assurance of a quality card. Me too. Bon Halen, I think the show is great. Don't get me wrong. Well done, but constructive criticism should be fine. Constructive criticism is always fine. Constructive being the key word. I'm not saying you weren't being, but I completely agree with that. Darcy, what is the number one card in all sports graded? I have a guess. Immediately came to mind. Do you have what you think it is, Karn? And I don't know for sure, but I know what I think it is.
In terms of like the number one iconic card, or like
I think he means population across the big grading companies. Which card has been graded more than any other?
Okay, I have a thought. Are you going to go first?
1989 Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
which are exploding by like they're like $1,800 right now. It's crazy.
It's crazy, man. How about the Mike Trout rookie? I bought my Trout rookie. I bought my PSA 10 Mike Trout Topps update for $300 at the National 2 years ago, and now it's like doing $2,300, which is more than I said when I made the same comment on my show last week. So it's crazy. All right, very quickly here. Thank you, Carlos. Appreciate the comment. Rod Booth says Honus Wagner. I think in terms of the most iconic card, of course, Honus Wagner would be. Yep, we have another vote for 89 Griffey, another vote for 89 Griffey, another vote for Griffey. What does Chris say? I was looking at that a while back. So many Griffies are graded. Yeah. Darcy says value-wise. Darcy, it's got to be the Honus Wagner, Mickey Mantle, 52 Topps, right? I mean, these are the most valuable cards in the hobby. Scotty, thanks for tuning in, brother. Appreciate it as always. All right, man. Listen, no more comments are in there right now, so we're gonna wrap it up. Karn, thank you so much, man. This has been a lot of fun. We went longer than I thought we would. So thank you for your time. I know it's late out there. Really appreciate your insights and razzing. Really a lesson for everybody in what it is if people weren't aware. What you did for the hobby with the card, the trading card vision system. Really appreciate you doing that, putting your own serious money out to that. I think we all owe you some gratitude for that. So thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Everyone else, sorry.
Thank you for having me, and continue what you're doing. It's a great show.
I appreciate that a lot, man. I really, that's what keeps me going. Guys, don't forget this Saturday, Brian Gray from Leaf. That's going to be entertaining AF. I'll leave it at that. Next Wednesday, I'm going to announce right now, next Wednesday, we're having another Collector's Perspective episode. My guest will be Barry Grice, the Grice Boys, a former Father of the Year as named by Upper Deck, a very passionate collector. He dabbles in all sports. He's out of Colorado, I believe he's in Denver, and someone who I've known personally for, almost 15 years. So it'd be great to have Barry on. It'll be a very chilled out discussion between a couple of collectors. So tune in for that. And then also the Saturday after that is Brian Price, another owner of a card company. So that's going to be pretty awesome. A great schedule coming up, everybody. Check them all out. Thank you for the comments that are coming in here, guys. Really appreciate all the positive feedback. Roddy says there's 73,000 Griffey cards graded by PSA. I don't know if that's just the 89 Upper Deck or if that's all Griffies, but that's a substantial number. Dave, thank you for the great show comment. Sincerely appreciate it, guys. 73. Okay, so Rod did some math. That's a big number. All right, Karn, thanks again. We're going to sign off, everybody. Good night. Thank you for watching. You can catch the whole episode on YouTube pretty shortly. Good night, everybody.